Public concerns. Have any speakers cards?
Not.
Buddy, on the TV want to say anything? Not hearing anything. Let's move to items 6, 7, and 8, consent items. Move approval. Second. Motion in a second. Call the roll. Nelson.
Director Martinson,
Yay.
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Director Berg,
Yes.
Director Cole,
Yes.
Director Ulrich, Stone.
Yes. To item 9, California Special District Association Board of Directors nominations for seat B. Nominations that we'd like to see for seat B.
Anybody want?
I'm here, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, on that, what, did we have something we had to file on that, Allison, if we weren't gonna?
I know you can just direct me to complete the form if it's, I don't even know that you need to. I'll respond with no nomination, just so they know we responded.
Yeah, cause I didn't, when I read through it, I didn't quite understand if we were supposed to send it.
Yeah, I think you're only supposed to send it back if you have a nomination, but I'll probably send it back saying that, you know, with a copy of the minutes or something saying there's no nomination, just so they know we're responsive.
They have a guy that wants to rerun, so I say let him have it.
Oh,
Okay, did we need a motion on that and a vote?
Are you nominating the incumbent? Or are you not taking any nominating action?
It's the pleasure of the board.
No action.
no action.
So do we need to vote for that or no? You don't need to vote. Direct Allison to Bill. Item 10. 745 Fairview Road, 18 Sierra Road annexations, resolution number 2025-05.
This went to the CEQA committee on March 10th. And it was recommended to bring it to the full board. This is more of a little bit of a housekeeping. As part of the annexation application to LAFCO, they do require a board resolution acknowledging that and authorizing us to proceed as the representatives for the properties wishing to annex into the district. It is 745 Fairview and 218 Sierra Road. Both properties have made all their financial arrangements with the district. Their applications are complete. And if approved by the board, the signed resolution will be included in those packets and submitted tomorrow to LAFCO.
Okay, gentlemen, we need a motion.
I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you. The process here is we go through the annexation, then they apply to actually connect to the system, and then they do the construction.
In this particular situation, we actually have one of the two properties that has been authorized to connect on an emergency basis. They have had a contractor certified that it's a public health and safety emergency. So they've been approved by LAFCO to connect under a specialty agreement that essentially binds them to complete the annexation process, but they can commence construction to prevent any sort of major public health and safety issue. And so we will submit theirs like any other one, but they have actually signed a formal agreement that is currently recorded against the property that binds them to complete the annexation process in full. The other one is going through the regular annexation process. So yes, barring any public health and safety emergency on their end, they'll complete the annexation process the next probably 4 months. And then they will commence construction. We'll be involved in the inspection of that. And so we'll know what happens.
District is involved in construction?
I will inspect it to make sure that when they connect, that it's in a form acceptable to the district.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any further questions? Director Berg.
I'd like to move approval for 10A through C.
Second then.
You have a motion in a second, Allison, please.
Director Martinson,
Yes.
Director Kentosh,
Yes.
Berg,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Mr. Ulrich.
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item 11, sign services, Orchard Lift Station Pig Receiver,
All right.
contract number 2025-07.
Yeah, for your consideration is the design services down at the treatment plant. The pig receiver is, well, I'll give you a little, how about if I give you a little bit of a lesson on cleaning force mains? So force main lines can be cleaned, and they are cleaned with what's called a pig. A pig is a foam bullet shaped thing. Think of a float on a lobster trap, shaped like that. You push it down into the system, so they'll turn the pressure off to the system. They push it down in there. They repressurize it. It pushes all the way through. It has a transducer on it, so if it does get jammed in anywhere, they can walk around with a wand and find it. Comes down to the end of the line. When it gets to the end of the line, there's a turnout. It's kind of akin to a sidetrack on a railroad. You have a couple of bars that keep the pig, so the pig can't cross the bars, but the flow can. Anyhow. Our crews pigged the line out Orchard Lift Station, and in doing so, what they observed were the two valves at the water treatment site are not seating. They're possibly from 1996. They need to be exercised frequently, and they do wear out. It's a caustic environment that will deal with wastewater. So the valves are leaking. There's going to be a problem at some point. Additionally, when the pig passed through these valves and made itself up to where we typically receive the pig, it didn't make it all the way to the receiving port. It's wedged. It's recoverable.
Line,
What's that?
still in the line?
It's in the line, but it's up back where you would seal it. So you just,
In a 45.
it's wedged in a 45 right before the end. So you can see it there, and there's a blank, there's a plate, but the way to get it out is either to take apart all the pipe or to get in there and drill it up into holes and remove it in chunks. What you have here before you is a design. The design would include two things. One, it would include changing and modifying the existing valves that are not seating, and it would include modifying and designing a better receiver station. The price of this is $17,000. The design firm would be Phoenix Engineering. Phoenix Engineering has done a fair amount of very good work for the district. They tend to be very economical, both in their design, but also in their construction side of things.
You have any idea what, I clearly, this is engineering services. Do you have any idea what the cost of redoing the line and the valves is going to be?
I don't.
We don't have an estimate yet, but
Have we ever done this before?
Not at this particular location, but yeah, I mean, we've done guys piping at lift stations and things like that. The new valves, they're not huge, so they won't be a major cost, but I mean, labor costs, it'll be 80,000. Depends on how deep that valve vault has to be. The deeper that is, the more it'll cost.
Less than I thought. Okay.
I would, yeah, I would guess under 6 figures, but.
I don't have an estimate. I do think it is beneficial for the district perhaps it's something that's going to need to be done at some point, the design. And as opposed to perhaps a building where it falls under new code, we can permit this. So this is a design that we can leave on the shelf. And if for at any time you needed to construct it, you wanted to postpone the construction, you could pull a design off the shelf, and this would be.
I wasn't worried about that so much as maybe we have multiple lift stations in the system. Just wondering if this or a previous set of engineering designs would be useful here, or this one useful in the future. Are all the terminations different
I'd say it's
so that each one has to be engineered separately?
a learning lesson to not do 45s in a pig catcher. The mistake that won't be repeated. But it's kind of a custom. It's going to be the valves are going to get excavated, so we'll probably construct a vault there so that we can access them easily in the future instead of having to dig them up. Depending on the size of that vault, it might be a customized concrete box that gets poured in, depending on the depth and the required dimensions there. If anything, I'd call it a lesson learned. But when the upgrades were done, we had to cost saving measure, or,
A couple of 22.5s is a lot easier to live with.
Well, I think
and
that's
bigger
how,
valves.
I think that's how that project rolled out. However, we're just using kind of standard fittings, if you will, up there. We have Ts, we have 45s, we have things like that. I would say that this is not a proper pig catcher, right? And that's why we have a spot where we can actually get hung up. So our intent for many years has always been to come back to this and get it on the front burner at some point and actually put in a proper pig catcher where there won't be any restrictions, and that pig will come down the line and actually roll right up into that catcher
And now that you need to replace valves anyway,
remove the pig. It's time to do that, especially now that we have a pig caught in the piping.
Yeah, I would just say I was invited down for the pig roast. Went down and watched it come through, and it's just gonna be a huge labor saving deal, not having to have everything up and pull it out little pieces at a time. One I'll definitely support.
This is the kind of project I like to see us doing. He thinks easier in the future.
put something up front and then smooth out the operational costs.
Exactly.
Well, I'll move to approve 11A and B.
Second.
A motion and second. Any further comments or questions? Would you call the roll, please?
Director Martinson.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
Yes.
Director Byrd.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Director Ulrich.
Yes.
And Chair Stone.
Yes. On to item 12, influent pump station level sensors. Budget adjustment number 2025-20.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have Liz present this one, if that's okay.
Scott and Bradshaw. Every tank and wet well, in our system has level sensors. The influent pump station currently has an air bubbler and a float system. And air bubbler has gotten to the point that it's kind of difficult to be serviced. It's a bit of an antiquated level sensor system. Throughout both our treatment plant and at our lift stations, we've been swapping out level sensors with radar sensors. Kind of the modern, the future for level sensing. And they can even be like, for example, in the wet well, you might be worried about it. They can get submerged and come back out and still function. They're reliable, easily tied into our SCADA. The floats as a backup system, but both floats and bubblers have issues with fouling where they're regularly submerged in the flow, particularly in the influent wet wells, lift station. Dirty in there. So this radar sensor, typically above the flow level, just much less maintenance, easily tied into SCADA. So we're proposing that we install 2 in each wet well and have TAF do the electrical work as well as the SCADA work to get that done.
Thanks, Liz. Director Quillisi?
How does your radar sensor work when it's submerged?
Read 0, but then when it is no longer submerged, it'll function again. So it can kind of withstand submersion. It doesn't read a negative value or anything like that.
Hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And getting coated with stuff doesn't affect it?
Uh,
At least before in the oil field, they get coated and then they don't work. It's oil. That's different than water. And
Yeah, we haven't seen that issue. But again, they're typically above flow and we plan to mount them high enough that shouldn't be submerged regularly. Ever, ideally. Ideally,
Okay.
but it should withstand it should they be submerged.
It'd be an alarm
Yeah,
if it goes to 0.
oh yeah, much less, yeah.
Gentlemen, any further? Need a motion?
move to do this.
12A through C. I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Wilson, would you call the roll, please?
Director Martinson.
Yes.
Director Kentosh.
Yes.
Director Byrd.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Director Ulrich. Chair Stone.
Yes. Item 13, sanitary sewer management plan, SSMP update by Fisher Compliance LLC. Contract number 25-06. Budget adjustment 2025-06. Take this.
This is gonna, this one too.
This one also?
SSMP, our sewer system management plan, it governs 1M, CIP implementation, training, et cetera. The goal is to have the regional board wants to see a document that shows that we properly manage our system, we prevent spills, and should a spill occur, we respond appropriately. That's required to be updated every 6 years with audits every 3 years now under the new general order. Since our last update, the new general order was released by the regional board. The last one was in 2013, I think. So it's been quite a number of years. So we need,
General order,
yeah, it's the general order from the regional board, the waste discharge
wasn't
requirement.
the last update of the plan.
No, that's separate. That's an NPDES permit. That's a different, yeah, requirements there. So this governs our collection system. And so that new WDR was issued, waste discharge requirements general order was issued in the last couple of years. This is our first SSMP update that will reflect those changes. Fisher compliance is an absolute, knowledgeable, one of the most knowledgeable people there is, absolute subject matter expert on this. He worked for the regional board for a number of years and is well connected, has some consultants that he works with alongside that are also experts in the field. We're proposing that he assist us in getting our SSMP up to date with the new WDR requirements. This is required to be submitted by early August, and it will, the revised SSMP will come before you, the board, for your review and adoption also prior to August.
Dr. Kintosh.
I just have a question about, and I'm just curious about something. We have all these regulatory requirements to do this every six months or 3 years. We've had all other studies and things we're supposed to do. What was the trigger for deciding to do this now? Was it a letter we got from the regional board?
It's based on the size of our population served. We had a due date for a new SSMP update of August 2nd, 2025. And then our next one isn't due. We'll have a audit due 3 years after that, February of 28. And then another audit due in February of 31 and a new SSMP update required in August of 2031. So it's scheduled by the regional board.
And they send you a letter telling you that it's due?
It's in the
Or list somewhere where you're keeping track of
It's in the CWIX database, and I think all small and medium size systems, of which we are, have the same due date. So it's pretty fixed. Yeah. They actually, part of their revision to the general order was to kind of normalize that. And it used to be that audits were every 2 years and updates were every 5 years. So you're kind of out of sync with it. So now they've done 3 and 6. So it kind of sense there on a rhythmic update schedule.
Well, thank you.
Director Berg, do you have something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Was Fisher Compliance, that was the same firm that did the TMDL stuff, wasn't
We did our last SSMP audit.
They did our audit.
it? I couldn't remember if they were the same ones that did the TMDL stuff early. No matter. Okay. Need a motion.
Second.
Motion and second, Allison.
Quillisi is the second. Is that right?
Yes. Call the roll, please.
Director Martinson,
Yes.
Director Kintosh,
Yes.
Director Burke,
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich.
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. Item 14, consulting service contract for the preparation of climate change plan contract 2025-8.
Yes, I'll handle this one. Our NPD permit and our WDR permit they now require that we have a climate change plan submitted by August 1st. I reached out and submitted an outline to the regional board. It's really kind of somewhat unclear of what they're looking for in their climate change plan. I reached out to staff, submitted an outline saying this is what we're thinking about. They concurred. They had no comments on that. Based on that, I reached out to 3 different consultants. We received proposals from 2 of them. Fisher was the lowest priced consultant, and but he's also the one that is works well with the district, and he was the auditor for when we had some discharges. So he works very well with the state also. What's before you is the consideration for Fisher Environmental to prepare the climate change plan according to our NPDES requirements.
Anything done by a consultant for under 20K?
No.
Miracle? It's a miracle. Consulting job under 20K?
It's just,
I don't know what you think about consultants. There are official guidelines for how to prepare these, because in the water business, they tell you how many percentage to assume of this or that. Are there any guidelines, or is it just, are we starting from scratch?
I think we're starting from scratch. I reached out for guidelines. There weren't any. I asked the consultants if there's guidelines. Some of them had some guidelines. The reality is on informal conversations I had going back over the course of months, the prices ranged from the $15,000 to $20,000 range that you see here to $85,000 to $90,000 range if you were going to bring in the climatologists and try to predict the climate in Ojai. It was my opinion that that's not in our best interest. So what I aim for is a practical consultant who take a look at our infrastructure, and presuming that there's some change in the climate, how's it going to affect our infrastructure, and what would be a practical matter for us to do.
Going to court, you just mostly answer the questions asked and shut your mouth. Many more to pick at.
do we know if who's done any of these for anybody else?
I don't know. I don't know if he has or not.
Well, I'm kind of gathering from this is a new thing. We've never done it before.
That's correct. When I had,
Guys that we're asking to do it don't really know what they're supposed to do either.
there's some truth
Why
to,
don't we just not do anything until we find out what we're supposed to do?
well, so the reality is it was due in February, and I asked for an extension to the regional board saying, hey, can we postpone this for 9 months so that we figure out what we're going to do? And the call I got back from the staff level at the regional board was, I just need something prepared so I can back off that something has been prepared.
Why don't we just write it ourselves, write it and send it in? I mean, we don't know what we're supposed to do. They've got some rule to respond to by some date. They're happy if you just give them a piece of paper that says you have a plan and we're gonna spend 20,000 on it. It just seems silly to me. What is the amount for this thing?
650.
All they want is a piece of paper, spend half an hour, write one out and send it in. I don't know. I don't like these open-ended, we don't know what we're supposed to do, but we're gonna charge you 20,000 to do it. I just think that's silly, but
Not sure
On the other
that's
hand,
the
we're
case here.
what?
I'm not sure that's the case here. Scott said he sent them a proposed outline for the plan. They concurred.
But he just said that they just needed a piece of paper, so.
I think
There was,
it's the outline that he suggested.
there is an outline, and it's, what they're looking for is executive summary. They're looking for us to outline the vulnerabilities based on interviews with wastewater treatment plant and collection system staff. They're looking at us to look at mitigation measures, both short and long term, for both the water treatment plant and the collection system. They're looking for us to identify resource assessments, staffing, equipment, materials, and funding, mitigation plan and schedule, outline training, and then looking long-term for plan review and schedule.
All right.
Well, it's a regulatory government. A lot of these regulators.
It is. Go ahead.
A lot of these regulators work with a checkbox principle. They have their checklist and they go, okay, climate change plan, you got that? Okay, check. And it's just something we have to do. And if you're willing to do it, that'd be fine. But I think we should just spend the $20,000 or $650 and just do it.
I learned something interesting about climate change. The biggest threat that is often quoted is sea level change. Right now is about 3 millimeters a year. Right? Something like that.
Weather Channel keeps giving me high surf advisory for Ojai.
It's about that number. It publishes it, I think you can write.
That happens.
60s, but
Sure, and
I
I'm
just learned that the average rate of movement of the Turkish plate towards Greece is 3 millimeters a year, which is why Santorini's having all its problems. So maybe we should be worried about continental drift and not climate. Anyway,
They haven't asked us for
I
that.
think we have to do it.
Well, the
At least
regulation,
we could do it for 10 instead of 20. That's the only, I think we're stuck with it, but.
I think it plays into the extended drought periods and heavier periods of rain and intensity and the impacts that it could potentially have on your system. And I think they're just looking for agencies to start thinking about some of these things that could happen. And, you know, I don't think we necessarily need to be real obligatory in what our response is as the contents to the plan. I think we just need to be thoughtful about the things we're thinking about moving forward. And I think this will become like a living document that we have to periodically to identify things as things change, even however slow that may be.
What he said.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good idea and we can work from it later. If we get what we need and we have to update it later, maybe we can do that in-house. Have what we need. It'll give us a
Yeah,
foundation.
I think our biggest threat is we don't have water to go through the plant.
Yeah.
The lake dries up.
Anybody else have anything? On entertain a motion if we don't.
We'll move. Second that.
Nelson, we have a motion in a second. Would you call the roll, please?
Director Martinson,
Oh, yes.
Director Kentosh,
yes, I guess.
Yes.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
and Chair Stone.
Yes. Okay, item 15 is discussion for independent audit services. Staff is looking for some direction.
Yeah, so we have an auditor that has completed their contract. It was a second 3-year term, Fector and Company. It was Scott German was here, gave his presentation. He's been doing the audit since 2019, so it's the 2019 through the 2024s. And we're looking for some direction on whether you would just seek a proposal from Fector for another 3-year term or a term of your direction. Alternatively, would you look for staff to go out and request proposals from other qualified accountants to perform similar duties? And if so, what would that term be? Or if there's something else that you would deem appropriate. The general gist of us is Allison's admin team. We understand what Scott German is looking for, and there is a learning process, is my understanding, if a new auditor comes on. So that would be one of the costs of coming in with an auditor. For your discussion.
There was some constraint, as I recall, on the part of the auditor. The principal auditor had to change every 3 years, was it?
The 6th year, they changed it on the,
6th year.
yeah, on the 5th year, they changed it for us already.
Okay, so that's not an issue? That's some total of my question.
Did they do a good job in those past years?
I mean, we enjoy working with them. I think they're very reasonable as far as, you know, I think they aren't maybe quite as rigid as some auditors. I think they are really good at evaluating your practice and sort of what is practical, is, you know, common, what restraints you may have based on the type of agency you are. So we really enjoy working with them. We've had no major concerns at all. I think last year we spoke to some of the challenges that we had. They were incredibly patient with us and really, you know, worked through a lot of those details. They're very responsive to questions. And I mean, we have no problem with them. I will say that public agency auditors in California are very limited. It's kind of a dying industry, if you will, post-COVID. So I don't know that you will yield an enormous amount of of responses should you decide to go out for an RFQ or RFP. And you may be limited as to the number of years that you can stay with a new auditor because of the size of the firm. They're kind of like the game in town, as far as auditing is concerned. A lot of public agencies are being dropped by their auditors, because they are actually getting out of that sector. I think it has to do with, my understanding, it has to do with just the ability to staff some of these larger firms. And so they're picking and choosing the specialty work that they do.
We have a recommendation from staff.
I mean, I don't see any reason why we would switch auditors, and sort of incur those challenges of switching. I also have concerns with discussing switching auditors this late in the year. We generally start working full force ahead with our auditor in June of every year. So a contract would need to be in place by May 1st, I think, to have any likelihood of a timely audit. Think that some firms would find that to be very challenging to transition to somebody new so late in the year. But it's entirely up to you.
Well, I have no problem recommending A.
I think so. If they're doing a good job and we get along well with them and there's a good working relationship, as long as we all understand they have to change auditors within the firm, say, stick with it.
We need a motion for,
I think so.
I'll move for approval of 15A.
The three-year option, Randy? That's for 3-year or other board director.
That's still within the law, right?
That's recommended for continuity.
I think the pricing would be obligation. Yes.
Seconded.
Okay, but
Would like to.
I heard you second.
Can I second that?
Sure. Who was the first? Randy, okay. Call roll on that one, please.
Director Martinson.
Yes.
Director Kintosh.
yes.
Director Berg.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Director Ulrich.
Yes.
And Chair Stone.
Yes. Item 16, standard 5840 and pilot 980 alternate work week schedule. Scott.
All right, thank you. So for your consideration is a discussion on the 980s alternate work week. I took this discussion to the Personnel Committee, and the Personnel Committee unanimously asked that I bring it to the entire board for discussion and consideration. So I'm gonna zoom out a little bit and talk about the 980, what the 980 is. The 980 is a schedule that's it's used quite frequently in public works. The county uses it, Cayugas Water District uses it. It gets used in a lot of cities. And the way a 980 works is you work 5 days in 1 week, and then you work 4 days in another week. So the reason they call it 9 is because you have the 9 days that you work and you make 80 hours up of those 9. The one caveat to California law to make it work is you have to have 1 8-hour day, because if that's just the way the math works. Your 8-hour day is a split day where the first half of that day goes into one of the 2 weeks, and the second half of that day goes in the other week. That way you're at 40 hours and you don't end up with overtime. And that's how it works. The day off that you would have, it would be, they call it the RDO, your regular day off, and the other day that you'd be working would be an 8-hour day. So an example of a 980 is you'd work 9 hours on a Monday, 9 hours on a Tuesday, 9 hours on a Wednesday, 9 hours on a Thursday. You'd work 8 hours on perhaps your Friday on. So you have 8 hours. Of that 8 hours, 4 hours of it bolts up to the previous 36 hours. The second 4 hours from lunchtime to the end of the day goes on to your next week's work schedule. Then you'd come in, you work 9 hours on Monday, 9 hours on Tuesday, 9 hours on Thursday or Wednesday, and then Thursday. So those 36 get added to the previous 4, and you end up with 40 on that week. And then you'd have your Friday off. That's the way the 980 works. It's in concert with state law. Internally here, we've looked at it, and I think there's some special considerations that the district has. When it comes to the the collection system, we have a prohibition of not doing work in Caltrans on Highway 33 and 150, non-emergency work. We have a prohibition of doing regular work on Fridays. The reason being is there's high traffic in and out of the valley on Fridays, and Caltrans doesn't want us doing that. So currently what we do is we do some maintenance here internally, or we will do work that's in the county areas. It's also somewhat frowned upon by the city of Ojai for us to do work in downtown on Fridays for that very same reason. But where I'm going with the whole thing is when it would come to the collection staff, I think it would be prudent to have the collection staff with alternating Fridays off, so that there would still be two people here. They could be doing some work around. They could be out into the county area. They could be doing line locations. They could be doing maintenance on vehicles, and that would alternate every other Friday. When it comes to the treatment plant operations, I think it's somewhat different. Bradshaw and I have talked about it, and he has a necessity to have at least 3 people scheduled on any given day. And one way that can be accomplished is having one of the people, if they decided to go into a 980, to have a Monday off. So we would have, perhaps you'd have a Friday A and a Friday B, so they would switch, but then on a Monday would be another one of the people. I have reached in, the lab is not interested in doing the 980 at this point. And so they're off. So that would be it for the treatment plant. Over to the admin and engineering. I've heard that the admin is not interested in the 980. When it comes to engineering, I think it's going to come down to specific people. I think one of the technicians is interested in it, and I'm not sure about another. So that covers the engineering and the admin side. The benefit is that we give some flexibility to the staff. That's one of the things that I think people are looking forward to, is some flexibility. The other benefit is if people have scheduled dentist appointments, doctor's appointments, those can be often fitted on their regular day off, and so you end up with less sick time. For the district, the benefit is that you've provided flexibility to your staff, and at really no extra cost to the ratepayers. The same workflow is getting done. I contend on some of the work, particularly with the collection system guys. My inclination is work will actually become more efficient because you will have a longer afternoon when you have a 9-hour day, as opposed to the current schedule is, where they're back here at wrapping up at 3:30. It's a short afternoon otherwise. So I think you're going to get a little benefit of that. When it comes to hours, I think it's reasonable to work with people to see what they're looking for. The treatment plant can work as early as 6 or 6:30 in the morning. The collection system cannot. The reality is we have a prohibition on firing up equipment here in our locale. Anything before 7, I think they can come in at 6:30. They can do their tailgate meetings. They can get their schedules. They can get ready to roll. But I think we're looking at a 7 o'clock of actually starting equipment. But a 6:30 start time would work for them. For the engineering, I think engineering and admin time, it's important that we cover what our client base is looking for. Right? When it comes to the engineering, the client base really is the treatment plants, operations crew. It really is the collections crew, and it is people that are doing developments and work within the community. For the admin, it's our customer base is the community itself.
Yeah, it sounds like a level of complexity is being added to the simple system. And wondering if people are accustomed to working with a 4-man crew and one is gone, that enters into a wrench in the works as far as scheduling and getting jobs. I'm not sure that, is this employee driven, or is this just an idea based on some other
I've worked the 980 myself and I thought it was absolutely terrific.
Here.
And when we conducted interviews, many of the interviewees specifically asked whether or not we were going to have a 980 and a 410 schedule. The 410 schedule is a separate modified schedule that I'm not a proponent of for this district. The 410 is you have 4 days on, 3 days off. So you work 4 10-hour days. The reason I'm not a proponent for it is that small district, we are, OVSD is a small district. As we're a small district, we don't have the overlap of enough employees. And there is a precedence here that there are certain people that want to work a regular 5 days a week. And I don't think that it would be fair to those people that stay on the 5 day to work, have to really adjust their schedule for the 410, because the reality is there is a big adjustment from the 410 to a 5 day a week. And I think it's too far for us.
Again, what is the downside of 5 days a week, 8 hours a day?
I don't think there's a downside of it. For the district, there's no downside. For the employee, it's one extra, we're shaving 10% off of their commute. So, and in our mind's eye, when I say our, the, management and is we think of people working, their 40 hours. The reality is some of these folks have a 35 to 40 minute drive home and a 35 or 40 minute drive to the office. And if we could shave off that, that's a benefit for them.
I can put my finger on something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I worked 8 years in aerospace with a 980. It was terrific. We didn't have regular days off. We did have every second Friday off because of the 980. So you could schedule a lot of things. Everybody else was still working, but you had the day off to go do whatever you needed to do. It was a huge benefit, it really was. And I think the staff would, many parts, love to have that flexibility.
But would we do this all, or would we do it on choice? Individual choice.
Choice. I think there are people who've told me that they want to stick to a 5 day a week, and I'm willing to honor that. And so my pitch here, or my ask for consideration is that we have a pilot program where we give this a shot for 3 pay periods to see if it works for the district. And it is by choice. Every individual employee can opt in, or they can decide not to opt in. And I think the 980 bolts up with people that decide to not opt in. And I think it still works with people that want to opt in.
Martin?
We went to a 980 years ago, but it made the big difference it made for this is a young family. It was wonderful because, you got that extra day off with the kids. The issue of being able to go make your appointments and all that on a Friday, not having to take time off of work, that was a big thing. Son would love to have this right now, but so I very much like it. I think it's very valuable. I would encourage you to go to 6 pay periods, take it long enough that you really see how it works. One of the things I would like you to track, you said you'd report back to the board, is because roughly half the staff, operating staff's going to be gone on Fridays, just how much overtime, there's an overtime increase on Fridays as a result of this compared to the last 6 months or whatever, and just see if that really affects anything. But in general, I'm very much in favor of the idea. I think it's wonderful that we can offer it. The choice is important. Some people prefer, as you say, to go the other way. Just making it work with a small staff to make sure things are covered, because you need half the people there. The problem we had with it is sometimes we were an engineering group. So the engineering tech would be gone on a Friday. Engineer would need somebody, gotta wait till Monday. So sometimes you have to get used to that. It's unpleasant for the person that needs somebody, but on the other hand, you're getting the next Friday off. So if you complain about it, you know, you're kind of in a, but people got used to that over, you know, a month or two. So I think, again, just extend the trial period longer so you can really see how it works. Because people will just be getting used to it by the time you're with the trial. And presumably you would want to end the trial, talk to the board, make your own decision about it, and either continue it, restart it or not. So the longer you can let it run and give everybody a good feel for it, I think, and I would encourage you to do that.
You're saying 6 2-week periods instead of 3.
Yeah, give it a couple months and just see how it goes. Nice. The other thing about the early start time, you know, with the 980, you can start earlier or keep the same start time and just work later. I always found it easier to just work later, especially in the summertime because it's longer days anyway, at least longer light days. Some longer hours of light, that's the way I should say it. So anyway, I think it's a great idea.
Kentucky.
We talked about this at the Personnel Committee, and Scott went into a lot of detail, and it's obviously been very well thought out. And the work that we got in the board packet has the same stuff in it too. So it's very well thought out. There's a lot of flexibility. I think we should just give it a try and see it as a pilot study and see how it works.
Sounds like
You're looking for a motion? Let me look for it up, and here it is. It goes now, it's here we go. Item 16, A and B, direct staff to implement the alternating work schedule. So it's just 16A.
For what period of time?
I like Lowell's suggestion of doing it a little bit longer.
For 12 weeks.
Time flies.
Time does fly.
I'll second the motion for 12-week pilot program.
Okay, I just had one quick question for Allison. I think we talked about it in the personnel committee, but I don't remember. So the algorithms for checks to do the stuff isn't going to be a problem with this, or is this going to create a issue for them?
Well, it'll take a bit. It'll take a bit to get it right in there, because they'll have to reprogram our whole entire back end of our pay period, of our pay system. So I would guess that it's going to take probably a couple of weeks for them to reprogram it.
It'll be a hassle for the bosses that do the scheduling.
So it'll be some white water saved a little bit. That's why I think the longer you can run it, stable.
I had it at Harris, everybody was on the same 980. I know you can't do that here. You need coverage on the Fridays.
Scheduling will be a little challenging until we get used to it.
But it's a great idea.
And you may find that some people want Friday off, some people want Monday off, you know, although that creates problems with the programming because you'd like to have it standard, but reasons of the plant operations, there may be a way.
I guess we have a motion and a second. If no further discussion, I guess we call the roll.
Director Martinson,
Yes.
Director Kintosh,
Yes.
Director Byrd,
I'm gonna say yes because it is a pilot.
Director Quillisi,
Yes.
Director Ulrich,
Yes.
and Chair Stone.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to item 17, resolution for the adoption of the Ojai Valley Sanitary District Vehicle Replacement Policy Resolution number 5-06. Scott.
Yeah, so this is, for your consideration, is the resolution that had been previously brought to the board. I have Dennis prepared the attached resolution. It's been reviewed by him. It's for the vehicle policy. And just as a reminder, it would be a vehicle policy where vehicles become available for replacement at 10 years and 130,000 miles for light duty vehicles. Heavy duty vehicles would be considered eligible for replacement at the 12 to 15 years based on condition and mileage. And we would have a funding of vehicle replacement shall be $200,000 annually, adjusted for inflation based on budgetary considerations of the district.
Any questions?
It's already been.
There was some discussion about the flexibility on the 200,000. And I read the wording in the resolution, but I wasn't clear where we landed on.
I believe it's subject to annual review, right? It's there's a CPI adjustment.
Resolution says annual review.
And annual review by the board. So if in any given year, if there's some budgetary constraint, the board,
We have some flexibility.
the board could elect to not hit that $200,000 mark.
So that's what I was looking.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Director Martinson.
Yes.
Director Kim Tosh.
Yes.
Director Byrd.
Yes.
Director Quillisi.
Yes.
Director Orr.
Yes.
Chair Stone.
Yes. On to item 18, planning discussion. 2026 budget.
So what this is the draft budget that I and the staff have prepared for the fiscal year 25 and 26. In it, we have the expected expenses of the treatment plant, the collection system, district management, and transfers to reserve funds. They are summarized in the first table, table 1. Second table shows individual expected costs are from destination. There is a significant increase. And table 3 shows our revenue, which is actually projected revenue, which is yes, it's flat. It's with DFA leaving. The reality is at this year it will be the first year without having DFA as a revenue source. Dairy Farmers of America.
Ken, have they gotten rid of all their 450 units?
No, but they're not going to be discharging. Correct. What I'm looking from the board is any direction that you make.
Just have one question, maybe I don't remember. You didn't ever figure the overages or the penalties on DFA into the yearly budget anyway, did you?
No, that's why our surplus was so large on the last couple, this coming year, because that only, it's such a small percentage, but the prior 2 years when they were discharging and they were being penalized significantly. No, that's why the surplus was so large at the end of the year. But we've never budgeted for any of these because their production was so inconsistent as far as what they were producing and manufacturing. They caused those overages. We could never get it consistent enough to count on that regular O&M budget.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Director Martins.
so I looked at this, I about fell over. Part of the reason was last year when we moved these transfers to funds, the shortfall magically worked out to exactly a 5% rate increase, which is what we did. There's no explanation as to why the money was being moved, just where it was being moved to. No justification whatsoever. So and now I see increased wages, insurance, and overall expenses. A non-starter with it. And I have to provide a whole lot more detail as to why you're moving $5 million from one thing to another. Because what this represents is a 40% increase in our rates to be able to cover that shortfall. We're not doing that. So we need to have, in fact, I was going to suggest we just table this until we can see the details because this just doesn't work. We can't go out with a 40% ask for a rate increase to cover the shortfall. So, and particularly with no explanation. Just as a for instance, within the top 3 categories, treatment, collection, and district management, that's $1.3 million of a budget of $8 million. So you're talking about 15% just in those categories overall. We voted for the 20% salary increases with no discussion as to how we were going to cover it. That represented about $400,000. So you've got basically $900,000 in there of increase that not explained anywhere. So I would want to know what that is. A 5-10% increase doesn't surprise me necessarily, but I want to know what it is. And which part of it is specifically labor, which is our own fault, not just something that happened. We voted for it.
I don't think that's going to change much, but I am equally concerned because transfers to reserve funds have gone up by double, 2.5 million. And I still do not understand why. I understand 100,000 a year to a vehicle replacement fund. That's one thing. The other 2.5 million or thereabouts, it just sounds like we're stocking the reserve funds and blowing the budget way out of proportion.
It is, and that's why, you know, like I say, last year was fascinating to me to see how it was done, but we used it to justify a 5% increase. And like I say, this number represents a 40% rate increase. And I found it interesting that you didn't in this discuss what you thought the rate increase was going to result from this, which should have been part of the discussion so we would know. But anyway, so like I say, my preference is to table this until we can go through and look at this in detail and figure out what's really happening. Because you can't take the time tonight to go through and explain it all to us.
Especially with flat revenue.
What?
Especially with flat revenue.
Well, yeah, and we know the revenue's flat, and that's not a surprise either, but it's, with that in mind, you can't come in with this kind of a, and the numbers are transfers. It's not like it doesn't already exist, so we don't need to go to the ratepayers and ask them to pay up money that they've already paid in because we move it from one place to another. So anyway, I don't know what the next steps are with this, but I, for one, definitely want to have more detail.
Transfers aren't just money that we have.
It's a transfer from a budget, right? Somewhere, it's a transfer from some fund to another fund, so. And it calculates out as,
Where's it coming from?
it then calculates out as a shortfall, and that, now that's.
Director Kintosh.
I'd like to express my appreciation, Scott, for you bringing this to us, even though it is a little upsetting. I think it's better to see bad news on the horizon than it is to have it presented to us the day we're going to approve the budget. So I think it's good. It's good that we have this information today because it kind of woke me up. We pretty lucky in the last half decade or so because we had this big NPDS project. We had to raise rates for the new NPDS project.
Disasters.
We had the FEMA disaster and everything else, and then we raised rates to cover that. And then we built the project for a lot less than we thought it was going to cost. And so we've been kind of coasting for a while. I think we finally began to hit bottom. So I appreciate the heads up. What I need to see, and I think it's good for two ways. First of all, it's good for us to know that we're going to have to roll up our sleeves to get to work because we're going to figure out how we're going to resolve this. But it's also good for you because it gives all of us a chance to say what we're going to be looking for. What I would be really interested to see is what have our rates been doing over the last 10 years? Because it's been a number of years since our rates went up. And I think in 1 year. In 1 year, well, that's what I need to see over the last decade or maybe a little bit longer. Because it may be that we kind of raise the rates in a step function knowing that we had this big NPDS project. And then now it's time for us to make a correction. But obviously with these kind of numbers, you're going to have to really spend a great deal of time figuring what. I appreciate the heads up.
I'm a little shocked by the number. And very, very efficient for 15 years. And what Jim just said is that it's all coming to a head. Couldn't get people to come to work here. That was discussed for probably 6 months. So the salary increase came out. Seemed to help. We've got people. I'm not sure that salary increase driving force here for this large increase, but I'm kind of with,
Can't be.
with Lowell, maybe we should get a little bit more detail and maybe pick at it. Look at each line item and see what, we just don't know.
Well, I think we need to know, and the transfer to reserve funds, that's money coming from ratepayers.
Well, it all comes from ratepayers. None of this doesn't come from ratepayers. Like I say, it's,
Pennies from annexation and installation, but I'd need to see the rationale for increasing the reserve funds, especially since we still have a lot of unresolved FEMA dollars out there. I would move that we accept the discussion, accept all the premises of the purported increase.
Yes, it is just a discussion, so there's no motion or voting or anything that approved, but isn't there a schedule for, we have another meeting and
3 meetings in April.
3 meetings in April? So is that the appropriate next time to dig into this, or do we want to do something earlier?
Finance committee, we need a finance committee involved.
Practically April.
Yeah, it's April next week, yeah, so.
So let me ask this. What kind of staff timeline are we looking at to dig deeper into this or get more detail?
It's all part of the preparation, so the data is already available.
Okay.
Essentially, all of the work that would normally have been done for the budget minus the, pretty cover, the written report is complete. It was done a month early, preparation for this discussion. So all of that information is available now. Any adjustments or conversations are very.
So we could put together a finance committee at some point and have that information for them. Sit down and take the time we need.
I think our first April meeting is the 21st, the 21st to the 23rd. With 26th or 20th.
I would like to see it go to the finance committee
Yeah.
long before that.
I think my apprehension with waiting is that if there isn't a consensus, it will be very hard to make the fiscal year deadline.
I would think that we did that in front of the finance committee sooner than later. And if it takes more than one committee meeting, or if it takes 6-hour meeting, hash it out, that's what we need to do. Everybody needs to be on the same page and have the same answers and the same material.
Amen.
So I guess that could be staff direction. With that, take a recess for a second here. I'm going to go into item 19 and 20, which is public employee performance evaluation, general manager, government code 54957B, and conference with legal counsel, litigation, government code number 54959D1.
Go to the end or-
Now we can,
Otherwise, people leave back.
we can go into the information items at the end.
All alone.
Ready? Okay, we're coming back into closed session to open session at 7:39.
Okay, so yes, the board met in closed session on the two items. With regard to item 19, the board decided unanimously to authorize council to take necessary steps to address certain recent employee complaints and to report back to the board. So item number 20, there was no action that was taken. So
Thank you.
on to the next item.
Okay, item 21. Statement on employee safety. Was that this memorandum from?
There's actually a public version that is posted as item 21 in the packet, which is just a general statement that was provided as public disclosure for that item. And then you're all in possession of a confidential memo that was not made part of the administration.
Okay.
Is that an accurate?
That's correct. Yeah.
This one that was handed out was the confidential.
Public statement of the month.
I didn't know if that all tied in or. Okay. Does anybody wish to pull anything off here for questions?
Even file.
Receive and file.
On the I have a question on the safety one.
Okay.
Has there been concern by our staff over safety, ability to speak openly and freely about safety issues?
Not that I know of. No, everyone's been open.
One of the things we had at United that was really kind of neat was we had a monthly safety award. And so someone would either make a suggestion or would do something or put a handrail up or some little safety thing or do something extra safe. And then we would give, we had nominations from anybody could nominate anybody else. And you'd get these nominations for random things that people did to improve their safety. And they get then it was a $20 gift certificate, maybe $25. Now it'd have to be $50. But you get a gift certificate to a local restaurant of their choice. And
Well,
then when you have your all hands on meeting, where you make the announcements as to who won that month's safety award or previous month's safety award. It is just a thought.
Got it. Thank you.
Right. Do we have any reports on meetings or seminars or conferences attended? Do we have anything that also was a few months ago? We got reports for that.
next one's in August, I think. Is that right? Just in San Diego.
Yeah, I think so, actually.
Items of interest or correspondence. Board member or general manager comment.
I have one. I got a call from a friend who's also commissioner in the city, lives in Oakview. And he was interviewing for a place on the Ventura River Water District Board because Jack Curtis had resigned. That's all I know so far, but they have accepted his resignation evidently because they are now interviewing for people to fill that spot.
Heard about those interviews.
Yeah.
I would expect that to be forthcoming as well soon, but
Did anybody talk to Jack and know what his medical condition is or what the situation is?
last time I talked to him, he was doing really well. And then I talked to him one other day, he didn't sound so good. He was on his way to the hospital, so I think it's up and down. Have you had any conversations with him lately?
The same, he was in poor health the last time I talked to him, probably. You go, 2 weeks ago, I needed something from him, so.
So that was about the same time I thought.
He's used up his 2449.
So,
Appearances.
so he either has to appear in person or, I mean, he can attend as a member of the public, but wouldn't be able to fill any.
He has come in that fancy wheelchair. If he's unable to do that, pretty serious, but he's looked like he's been in a hospital bed.
Are there any rules that we have if you attend anyway? How long that goes on before?
We're all separately elected, Lowell.
Yeah, it would have to be the
Can
public
choose
that
to
would.
attend or not.
The
No,
public would have to make that call, I think.
I think other districts have either bylaws, part of their enabling legislation that says how many meetings you can miss before you're considered to be gone.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, some districts do write that into their bylaws. I looked at our, don't have anything.
Have anything?
In the city, it applies to appointed staff. It does not apply to elected officials.
Looked at our enabling legislation.
Yes.
I think there.
Public put him there and only the public can take him out.
He himself.
He resigns.
So if that's what he's thinking, he may decide to do that with this. If he were to do that, you have to have a special election, or we appoint somebody, we interview.
Review and appoint.
Remainder of his term, then he would.
Yeah, they have a short term and then. They'll come back to run.
Yeah.
Because we're past the midpoint of his term.
That's right. Elections, yeah.
Okay.
Anything further?
Sir.
Our manager comments?
Yeah, I've got a couple. First, I'd like to recognize the diligence of the treatment plant crew. The belt filter press broke down a while back, and they were able to get it repaired. I get it up and running, and they returned the rental one. So a shout out to the treatment plant crew. I'd also like to recognize the collection system crew. They did the work down there at Orchard Lift Station. They've also been really busy in training, successfully training both Danny and Tatiana. Tatiana is the engineering technician. Danny is the environmental compliance inspector. And so they've been helping out quite a bit over there.
We still have 2 vacancies.
We'll have 2 vacancies, yes. The admin team also have been helping out and been very welcoming to Danny and Tatiana. Looking forward, I'm hearing what you said about the budget, and we will have some details for you on that. Regarding the TMDL, the D-night filters. So we being engineering, myself, Bradshaw, and the operations crews down at treatment plant, D-night filters are currently not working as designed. We're working with Stantec, we're working with Parkinson's, we're working with the Micro C, who are the producers of the carbon source that we add. Bradshaw and his crew went out to visit Lake Arrowhead. Lake Arrowhead also uses Micro C, and so they were out there for a site walk last week to try to figure it out. It's on one of 2 things. It's either high excess dissolved oxygen, or there is something to do with the glycerin and not enough mixing time. So what we have done is twofold. One, we're trying to reduce the DO that's going in the system. And we've also added an extra ditch on board to help some of the mixing to try to keep the glycerin from clumping together. The Stantec, the PhDs also recommended that we slowly ramp up the carbon source. Too much carbon all at once seems that the bugs can't handle it. And that's one of their recommendations. So
Get something to dilute it before you add it.
we have been doing that, and there's a pump that mixes, and we're making sure that pump's running at full speed also. So there is a looming deadline on that. So the looming deadline is June 28th, 2025. And I have every intent of either getting the MDL working or giving an early notice to the regional board that it's not working. So I've set an internal deadline that I think the folks can work with, both the PhDs and our operations staff. And I'll be bringing that back to you guys for notice.
So it seems like it's more of a science issue than a hardware issue.
I think so. Yeah, so it's I've heard a few things. I've heard that other agencies had a difficulty with the Micro C and mixing, and once they improved the mixing, it went away. I heard of another agency that had to cease using Micro C and start using methanol as a carbon source, and that seemed to help. The problem with methanol is it's flammable, and no one really wants a big out of flammable liquids. So what you end up doing is you take delivery at a certain solution and then you add water to it, so it's no longer flammable. That's one of the tricks.
It's like you dilute the micro C.
Any comments?
Have you taken a look at the pilot studies that were done? Because they did a small scale studies of the plant. And they blew it up to this full-size plant. And sometimes when you scale from small to big, you lose something. It probably might be worth studying that, having your experts take a look at that too. If anything could have changed in the scaling.
It certainly seemed to work as a pilot program.
We were told it was going to be a cakewalk. How far are we off?
Yeah, we're running at around 5 total nitrogen, and don't quote me on that, about 5, and I believe our limit is going to be 3.2 to meet our summer goals.
So a third or more to come out.
A third or more has to come out, yep.
All right, any other questions for the general manager? That we will be adjourned at 7:51.